Hey, it's Patricia Murphy. It's Thursday. This is Seattle Now. If you can drive to Quilcene, you can get a vaccine. Not really. My producer made me say that because it rhymes. But Seattleites are hitting the road to find doses outside the city, ahead of a few million more people becoming eligible next week. KUOW's Esmy Jimenez will tell us about that in a minute. But first, let's get you caught up. If you're one of those people with April 15th circled on your calendar, Seattle says you don't have to wait to schedule your vaccine. You can start signing up to make an appointment now. You've got to live or work in King County, be at least 16 years old, and looking for a first dose. This isn't for second shots. If that's you, you can sign up to get an email as soon as there's an opening at any of the city-run vaccination sites. Those are in North Seattle, Rainier Beach, West Seattle, and the Lumen Field Event Center. Meanwhile, a hiccup in the nation's vaccine supply chain is hitting our state ahead of next week's opening to anyone over 16. Seattle Times reports that state health officials said yesterday they're anticipating fewer doses than expected due to that manufacturing problem with the J&J vaccine that wasted 15 million shots. The plan was for Washington to get 600,000 doses a week this month. They now say they'll be more like 500,000 next week, at least. And Washington is on the verge of becoming the latest state to ban schools from having Native American-themed mascots and team names. A version of the bill has passed both the House and Senate. Now they're working out some details. If it becomes law, public schools could no longer use imagery and team names such as Indians, Braves, Chiefs, or Tomahawks. That would affect more than 24 Washington schools. There's one exception, though. It's okay if a nearby tribe gives permission. Social media is awash with vaccine stories, who grabbed one where, which location needs which information, and in some cases, stories of Seattleites driving hours to get vaccinated. Yep, this is a thing. KUOW reporter Esmy Jimenez was out at a vaccination site in Yakima recently. She's here to tell us what she found. Hey, Esmy.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. I'm so glad to talk to you. I have been hearing these stories all over the place. I have a friend in Seattle who drove to Spokane. I've heard about people traveling to Island Drug in Oak Harbor. Call it vaccine tourism or vaccine FOMO. This is happening, and it's probably going to get more intense now that eligibility is increasing. What is going on here?
I think people are, feeling like, yes, they have to actually compete against others to get this golden ticket, and it seems like if you have your 2 shots or your 1 shot, now you're safe. But the thing is, the rules are always changing, and then your personal compass as to what you think is the right thing. Are you supposed to wait till they absolutely call you? Or, are there ways that you can find either loopholes or just completely flub the rules, especially knowing that there's little to no accountability if you do?
I compared it to general admission at a rock concert, where everybody's trying to rush the floor at the same time.
Yeah. You want to be safe. You want to get in.
That's right. Right. So you were just in Yakima, where there's a big site being run by FEMA, and it's, I guess, one of 4 in the country so far, and that's for a reason.
Yes. So basically, they chose Yakima because Yakima got really hard hit by the pandemic early on, right? And there's a number of reasons that I can explain about why that is. So they pretty much were like, let's set up this location here centrally, right? There's a lot of folks that are essential workers. There's a lot of POC communities. We just want to make sure that people get vaccinated. Let's get them fast-tracked through this.
Okay, so these are people who may have issues getting a vaccination for one reason or another. There may be a barrier. But the other part of this story is that there's a pretty savvy online community of vaccine hunters who are taking advantage of this situation. Not trying to cheat necessarily, because, of course, nobody wants to waste a vaccine. But this Yakima site is becoming the place to go. So we have Seattleites driving out to pick up a shot. What are they saying about why they're driving across the mountains instead of staying here closer to home?
Yeah. Well, so I found this Seattle Vaccine Hunters Facebook group, right? It's got 17,000 people so far. And the idea that they keep saying over and over again is it's not to cut the line, but it is to make sure that doses don't get wasted. And so what I've been seeing anecdotally is people saying hey, you know what? I know that we could wait eventually for when either the state or the feds allow us to do this. But here are some places that, have an immediate availability for doses. So some folks say, they go to small CVSs. Some folks drive all the way to Yakima. They're just trying to figure out how to get in. I talked to one woman named Lena. So she's actually vaccinated. She's in the Seattle area, and her boyfriend actually isn't vaccinated. So they'd kind of been looking around for places so that he could maybe volunteer and then get a shot that way at the end of the day. But anyways, they had these two friends who went to the Yakima FEMA site, and they said it was wide open, right? There was way more shots than people, and they were actually worried there were doses going to waste.
And so we said, well, we'll drive there later at the end of the day so that we can get a waste shot, because we didn't feel good. We were like, we're not going to make an appointment. Like, we're just going to drive up. We're going to see what's going on. And, like, worst case scenario, it'll be a pleasant drive. We took our puppy out with us and just took, like, a nice leisurely drive out there. And so then we got there, and when we pulled up, we said, like, he's not eligible. We're just here to see if there's, like, a waste shot or what's going on. And they were like, yep, not a problem. And they just took his information, and we got in line.
And then, at the end of the day, they got a vaccine for him.
Okay, wait a minute, though, because listening to this, it just occurred to me, they're going to have to drive back over the mountains again to get their second shot.
Potentially, yes. And so that's where some folks are also figuring out, like, how do I get my second shot? We know next week, everyone technically will be available then, or eligible rather, to get a shot. So that's happening. But it is this weird thing of, like, almost like reverse whack-a-mole. I don't know. It's really complicated where you have to go find these spots of what's open when and trying to feel like you're keeping up with other folks.
Yeah. I mean, I would imagine that before driving to Yakima, many people tried many different ways to get a vaccine locally for one reason or another, did not work out, and they just felt like this is an option that they have. Like my friend who drove all the way out to Spokane, right? Tried to get a shot here, couldn't get it, decided to take off and take that road trip. I am curious, though, how the people running this Yakima site are viewing these Seattleite interlopers coming in and getting vaccines.
Well, it's been interesting. So when I went this past weekend, I got a tour from Jordan Gustafson, and he said, whoever is here, we're going to give them a shot.
Our goal is to get shots in arms. We want to get everyone vaccinated. If you show up, we're going to give you a vaccine. That's our goal. We obviously want this community to get vaccines. We want to get the underserved community. We have a pretty simple idea of just getting people vaccinated, however that looks.
So he was very adamant, if you show up, you will get a shot. Later I talked to some folks from the Yakima Health District who were very local, and they were saying, okay, sure, we won't turn you away, but it would be nice if you did wait in line.
We have done a lot of work to reduce the barriers, but not to open it up to the general community. The reduction in barriers is meant specifically for underserved, harder to reach community members to be invited to feel like they can easily access the vaccine. And so I understand the reality is there is a limited amount of verification that's being done. And that's where we're really relying on our community members to do the right thing and to wait for their turn and to stay closer to home.
I think that's where there's conflicting messaging from the feds, local officials, the state as to you could wait or you can get in this line and you'll still go in anyway. And people kind of have to make the ethical choice then. What am I willing to do?
And I feel like that has been a theme this entire time. There's been the wink nod crowd and the rule following crowd and the I'm just going to skirt in here crowd. The Yakima site was intended to reach a certain group of people, farm workers, agriculture workers, people who may have barriers to getting vaccines. Are they successful there at that site? Are they vaccinating the people they came to vaccinate?
Yes and no. So one of the things that they started doing is doing mobile clinics where essentially they will go out to orchards, they will go out to farms, and they'll offer people vaccines there. And that's an option. This is also one of the reasons why the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is so popular among some Latinos and farm workers who are out there. Because instead of missing 2 days of work, right, you just get the one. So I think they are getting some folks. I think the other issue that health officials are up against is misinformation or disinformation. And this is where people say, oh, I hear that the virus will make you sick, or I hear that there's chips in it, or I hear that there's stem cells. And there's just a confusion as to what's in it, what will it do for me, and what happens if I don't get it. It almost seems like maybe there's not enough information for them to make a good choice.
Yeah. And it seems like FEMA sites like this could be a source of good information, right? If they could get it out to the people who needed to hear it.
Trish, if I can, I think the other thing that someone pointed out is that because it's run with the National Guard as well, it looks actually really scary. Like you could go in and suddenly there's all these tents, all these armed military folks. If you don't know what you're coming into, you're like, what is going on here? And this park is technically the Central Washington State Fair Park. This is where typically families see roller coasters and like cotton candy. And now it's turned around into this FEMA site, with thousands of people coming in and out.
Yeah. So, all right, before we go, here's the big question on my mind. Should you take a vaccine at a faraway place if no one else is stepping forward to get it? It's a question so many people are asking right now and really just trying to puzzle through.
Yeah. Well, in talking to Lena and her boyfriend, one of the things that struck me is she was talking about saying, I'm not going to do anything that I would not be okay with someone else doing. So if everyone else did what I did, would I be okay with that? So they were kind of able to be thoughtful about it, even when she says, it's a very complicated, murky area.
I don't know. I mean, to be honest, we had expected it to be much more empty. I was surprised at how many people there were. And from what I understand, this last weekend, there's even more people. And on top of it, there's the inequity of not everybody in Seattle has the ability to drive all the way out there. Mm-hmm. Fortunately, we have a car. Both of us were able to take off the time from work to drive out there. It wasn't really that difficult, but it took 8 hours in total. And I think that's one of the things that we're dealing with right now. The pandemic is how do we make sure that everybody has equal access to this? And yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is.
I've seen some other folks, kind of balance it out by actually volunteering. So they'll make sure that they, at least volunteer for 10 hours. They help out through a site. And then there's this almost this idea of either I paid it back or I paid it forward. And now it's okay if I get a dose at the end of the day.
Well, and there's that theory, the greatest good for the greatest number of people. The goal here is to really get the vaccine into enough people so that we can get where we need to be. So in that way, I guess maybe everybody's off the hook in the end.
Maybe. It's very tricky. It's a lot of weird social math to figure out, ooh, do I want my mom doing this? Should I be doing this? What about the neighbor?
Esmy Jimenez covering immigration for us at KUOW. Good to talk to you. Thank you for your work on this.
Thank you, Trish.
Seattle Now is produced by Clare McGrane, Caroline Chamberlain Gomez, and Jason Pagano. Matt Jorgensen does our music. I'm Patricia Murphy. See you tomorrow.